I think when a young hockey player, any hockey player for that matter, sustains a potential concussion, coaches and parents and teammates should look for a few immediate warning signs. The first being dizziness or balance issues, having a hard time standing up, finding their feet. The most common thing that young athletes will do, especially those who are concussed, will hold their head right away. So they'll complain of a headache. In hockey, it's not that uncommon to have a difficulty focusing on bright light. Hockey's a sport where the lights above are quite bright and the ice below the surface is white and quite bright. Headache, dizziness, balance, and light sensitivity are probably the most immediate signs and symptoms that an athlete has a suspected concussion. I think immediately there are some signs that are present, but it doesn't have to be immediate for certain symptoms. It could be delayed. There are some symptoms that are known to be delayed, such as headache or fatigue, but as a few hours progress, as they get home, then they might start to see an increase in fatigue, lethargy, headache. Initially, a headache may not be noticed or reported by an athlete, but it may come on later on. Balance as well. As an athlete as all the gear comes off, from shoulder pads to knee pads to shin guards to elbow pads to skates, and as they get back into their own shoes and they start to walk, they may notice that they may have some balance problems. We don't usually see signs and symptoms start to hit an athlete 10, 12, 13, 14 days later if they weren't there initially. When that happens, we have to ask, did something else happen? Or is there some other factor at play? But 24, 48 hours later, it's not uncommon for symptoms to present themselves. When you're watching a game and you think that a young athlete has sustained a concussion, the most important thing to do is recognize that and remove them from the game. We have a very simple saying, when in doubt, sit them out. And it's better to err on the side of caution than to risk the potential long-term effects of another injury. And most of the time, they may say that they're fine. We used to look at memory and attention as being factors for having sustained a concussion. Now we're looking at the eyes and the visual ocular system, or balance and headache, etc. So even though an athlete may say they're fine, if you see that athlete has crashed into the boards or taken an elbow to the head, even if it's a big game, the most important thing to do is recognize that it's occurred and then remove them from the game. When an athlete comes and is evaluated by a medical professional to see if a concussion occurred, there's no one test that will determine, did you have a concussion? A test really is not going to prove a concussion. It's more complex than that. It's looking at the clinical features. So what are the clinical features? Then you kind of have to assess the entire individual's presentation. Are there changes in cognition? Are there changes in balance? Are there changes in emotions? Are there changes in headache? Are there changes in vision? So you look for a system of changes that take place to determine whether or not a concussion has actually occurred. And the other factor is you want to make sure that it's isolated or pertaining to that incident. In other words, the athlete didn't say, well, I've always been poor in this, or I've always struggled in this, or I've always had balance issues. You want to rule in and you want to rule out. And so you want to also take in a detailed pre-injury history before you come to the diagnosis that this is related to the actual event that happened on the ice.